that.
Have you always lived in New York, Gnu?
32 years now. I'm 40 this year. Well, technically last year because I'm a December baby. But before that was the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and back and forth from my dad's res in Lecoutere or LCO, Wisconsin.
And for both of you all, how did you all get into filmmaking? What was your path to that?
For me, it's almost like it chose me because I had no intentions of being a filmmaker. Have an art degree, was in the arts always, in music, and different phases of my life developed certain skills and business part of it. But I was an art teacher for a while, and students like seeing visual ways to learn. So I made a bunch of little shorts, including the students, and had friends who were filmmakers and worked on their films. And it just kind of takes you over. You become addicted to this beautiful craft of telling stories. And after I wrote the book I worked on several other documentaries too, but it was a natural thing to do to make a documentary on Earl after doing the book. But it wasn't like one day, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker. It just kind of snuck up on me, like build some skills, because the technology today, more people can. But then, to keep the quality up too, that takes a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of practice to make your film as good as it can be. And it's just, to me, it's visual storytelling. and I love it, and I'll keep doing it. I'd like to hear what some others think of how the craft got them. If they chose it or if it snuck up on them or what.
I think I grew up in a time when I think we have the best generation of films growing up. The 80s and 90s kids. I think it's for science fiction, for storytelling, for pioneering certain things. I think that being a part of that generation really kind of helped me, get into films. But growing up, I was always put on stage and in front of kids at school. Being a Native American singer and dancer, it's one of those things where your parents bring you up to know the culture and traditions and things like that. And one of the things that we did were gigs, quote unquote, which we would just display our culture for schools in the area. We would go to powwows and things like that. And, it's kind of put out in front to be able to memorize our creation stories and the story, the meanings and stories behind the dances and things like that. So there's a lot of memorization. So that kind of got me into the theater realm, because my mom was also big into theater when she was younger as well. So when I was brought up, I kind of caught on to that influence. And with, my love of movies and storytelling, I think I kind of got into that. Then I had kids, and then it kind of fell off, and I had to work for a living, and now that my kids are older, I can kind of focus on myself a little more than I used to, so I'm kind of getting back into it. And Looking Glass was my first venture in probably 10 years. So.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What did your kids think about your film?
Oh, they loved it. I'm a superhero, especially since I had to star in it. Because they love movies too. So when you show them a movie, they kind of get glued to it. And then, even the little nephews and nieces and things like that, they're all, especially my little cousin who plays the younger me in the film, man, they just feel like superheroes. Like, I know these people, I think it's their first kind of, we do have a generation of kids who love movies, generations plural, and for them to also kind of see the craft behind it, you know,
Mm.
being there on set and seeing the fruition of things, they get it, and I think that opens something up for them the same way it did for me, and I think I grew up in a time as well where shows like Movie Magic, things like that, when they started, those started happening, and then of course the behind the scenes stuff on DVDs and Blu-rays and things like that. It gets you more engrossed into like, wow, this, you can really do this, like this happens, like this is how it's done, and then you start really getting kind of addicted to,
Yeah.
trying to do that yourself.
I think that's the thing I really like about independent film,
Mhm.
because it does communicate either to older people who've had the passion but just never followed it, or younger people, that it doesn't have to be $1 million studio budget to tell a story, and everybody's got one. It's just finding your medium for telling yours. And that made me wonder, have you ever put any of that history that you teach through dance, have you ever put any of that in writing?
Um, well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of my my angle, my theme in the films that I create. Um, Oral histories, meanings, and how that relates to me as an individual being a Native American in a modern world,
Mhm.
in a colonial world. How are those forces working together to create a life experience that can allow myself as an artist to create an understanding where other people can look at it and understand it as well and possibly do something for them. I know with Looking Glass, I've had quite a few people say, thank you. This film has really helped me with something that I couldn't really pinpoint what it was. And I can't really pinpoint what it is in the film, but it allowed me to kind of let go of some stuff, you know? And, that's a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to create an artwork that can help somebody, because it's you basically releasing that, subconsciously or consciously, however you put it.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, um, as far as modern contemporary Native American song and dance, there was only one powwow song in this, but this one is really rooted in ceremony, things that predate powwow, you know. Um,
Mhm.
so growing up traditionally, I was able to, especially knowing that a lot of our prophecies and things and how they come to light in reflection to our modern world. Um, I took that stance in being able to try to visualize that, um, and make that a meaningful story within the characters themselves. Um, because I think for those of who've seen Looking Glass, the only thing that was fictional about that was the my father's death in the film. Um, but everything else thematically, and then everything that was traditional, those were all true. All the things, my uncle actually plays my father in the film, and a lot of the conversations were conversations that we actually had in real life. Um, and then I had him basically say those things to his son, and that's his actual son, my little cousin playing me. So again, it's like one of those things where you're passing on oral traditions, um, but with a new flavor, which is filmmaking,
Yeah, storytelling is the oldest form of,
hmm
well, actually, before that, like visual, the pictographs, all over the world, when they find these very ancient, many thousands of years old uh, images that have meaning. And uh, I took a class once about neuroscience of how people learn or retain information. And I think it was something like 90 some percent was visual. So when you're in a classroom and the teacher's going blah 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 blah, yeah, you'll get some. Remember that in school. You'll retain some information because auditory learning is important too. But it's the visual that sticks, And that's why filmmaking is a very powerful tool, whether it's for entertainment or learning or education or all of it combined. It's just a very, very exciting way to tell a story. And I just am happy to be here and experiment with it.
And that's kind of one of the things that I really like about film as opposed to theater. I love theater. I love getting on stage. I love being there in the moment. But what's really good about film to me is that it's a one-off. You do it once and you're able to share it over and over again, and then go on to the next idea instead of doing the same idea over and over again to different audiences. You have this one gift that you can just kind of keep, the gift that keeps on giving when you do it one time.
Yeah,
But sorry about that. But there is something about theater. Again, going back to your statement about being, visual and oral cultures. That's how we do it. So there is something to be gained about physically being, in a theatrical environment. But I like the satisfaction of completing something once and taking a lot of time on it and care for it. And presenting that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about that because before I moved to Durango, I lived in New York City and I was in theater for many years, and that audience reaction and being there in person was always, I loved watching the audience reaction, and that's part of the thing I miss with a virtual film festival is being in a group watching a film together and having that group reaction and being able to talk about the films right after and all that. So I'm very thankful we're able to do a virtual festival, but I'm looking forward to getting back into person next year.
I would have loved it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I liked what you said in the sense that I haven't seen your film, Gnu, but I have seen the Earl Best. And so to get that kind of introduction to either the person who isn't here any longer or their format, because his was art, and then to watch your film, and then you can follow up. So you can have the one experience, but then it exposes you to a whole lot of other avenues to know more about that person, whether that person is the subject of the film or the filmmaker. And so it just kind of continues on and branches out and impacts, because I watched it with about 4 other people. And we did kind of talk about what spoke to you the most and where could you see more of that kind of work, or so it keeps on giving, and it expands your just kind of your source into that person's life or that person's values or whatever the history. There was one person who is Native American who watched the film with me, and just like you said, she could talk about her experiences that were similar but different. And so it's really nice. It's a really nice format because hopefully some of the independent ones do go on and more people see them, and that's the goal. But even if it seems like it's a smaller group and having it up on some traveling the world, it's still an impact, because that smaller group goes out and impacts other people and says, oh, you really need to go see if you can find this.
Yeah, well, Earl Biss had a message, and of course he spoke through his art, and that was the way he communicated it, very powerfully through his art. But hearing him talk about his life and his art really expands the understanding of the art. And I got to say, he probably influenced my direction after having taught art for a while, and then I'm through with that part of my life for a while. It was wonderful to teach art, and so I could paint, I could play music. What am I going to do? But Earl actually said, when I was working with him in person, he said, if I had to do over again, I'd be a filmmaker, because there's so much more you can say with visuals and stories in a film than you can in a painting. So I got to say, he influenced my decision of where I was going to put my attention in the next years, because it does combine all of the things that I have developed over the years. I don't have a whole lot of experience in theater, but I did have some, so there's that part of it. And to me, music and art is very related. And I did compose some of the music in the film too, but the most powerful part was from crows, from the Crow Nation, both the traditional and the contemporary music. And I think that was a pretty important part of getting the feeling. Music's so important. I think Janu would probably agree with that too. But yeah, what a wonderful way to tell stories and have messages. Not my message in this case, of course, had a viewpoint there. If you're a director, your viewpoint's there. But it basically is Earl's message. And I felt a big responsibility for that, not to mess it up.
So what are both of you working on now? Like, are either of you working on films?
What about you, Janu?
Well, I mean, I think everybody has that tough thing about COVID and trying to be able to accomplish certain things. But I was able to create a full feature script called Iron Shirt. And Iron Shirt is a child superhero film that I want to make. And it's based off of the legends that we have of our warriors who wore certain shirts that were bestowed upon them by the community in the times of the cavalries coming in. And it said that those warriors were fast and silent, and that in battle it seemed like bullets would either go through them or they'd be impenetrable. So taking that concept into a modern kind of context of the superhero genre, and I thought that would be a great adventure to have. So I finished that script, and on my YouTube channel I actually have the trailer, so if you want to check it out, just Gnu Benton. So I made a pitch trailer, so we managed to film all of that, so that I can get going ahead on trying to pitch that to people. And I don't want to, I should knock on wood, but I have some interest through the Jim Henson Company at the moment on an idea that I had. And that's as far as we got so far. It's a good idea. It's an interest. So, I may or may not be directing a Jim Henson production. So.
Oh, exciting.
That's
It is, yeah.
Could you post your YouTube link on the film festival's Facebook page?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
we'd
love
love
to,
to.
yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
watching Looking Glass, it's just like, it seems like you're at the beginning of some really amazing stuff with your talent and
Yeah.
your understanding of the subjects, and I want to see more.
Right. And it's been very difficult, per se, because, I think Looking Glass is a little out of the box of what's stereotypically Native. I know there's a lot of filmmakers who are 40 and under now, who are really thinking past the traditional stereotypes. So I think that now is the time, that it was appropriate for Looking Glass to exist, because you have a whole generations of people again who understand not only the traditional significance behind Looking Glass, but also understand my style, and who get it because we were all raised in the same eras, and what that means for us in being able to look into the future. And I think that's the main topic that I like thinking about, is because when dealing with Native film, everybody seems to really be focused on the past, but also the Hollywood version of the past, and then also the present, which is really good. But I don't think people, I think people are just now starting to wake up into thinking about, if you can see the image there, the future of what Native people can accomplish through looking to our past for a very thought-provoking future. And I think a lot of people are waking up in general in the world to Indigenous knowledge and what it is that we have always been able to offer to the table. But our voices weren't heard because of the way the world was. And I think if we continue to look at each other, look at our differences, and be able to come to that understanding, you know, the teachings behind Looking Glass can actually be fulfilled into the future, that we know and understand who we are, you know, and come to that peaceful place and educating ourselves for a better tomorrow, you know.
Yeah. I noticed Christina Johns joined us. I don't know if you're at work or able to speak, Christina. If you had anything you wanted to add, she's our screening head for the Native Cinema program. So she and her committee were the ones that put the program together. I don't know if you want to talk any about that at all, Christina.
Good morning. I see we have just a couple of the filmmakers here, but yeah, I think that this year we had an amazing selection to choose from, and it was really hard to actually make the selections and actually cut anybody because they were really good. And for me, I felt like, I guess I always feel like it's important to choose films that I think represent the, you know, Native communities well and are educational, because a lot of people are unaware of how different each tribe is. Like even I listening to or watching Gnu's movie, I got it, but there were certain things in it that the symbolism, I was like, during our live Q&A, I was like, oh, okay. I knew there was something to it, but it was a little different than what I interpreted, just because, you know, my tribe's different than his tribe. So it was like, oh, okay, so we have the same concept, we have sweat lodges, but it's a little different. So I mean, even I felt like I learned a lot by all of the films, because they were very different from one another, but all of them gave something. So I really enjoyed all of the films, and I enjoyed the Q&As because I felt like they really added to the understandings of the films and what people really brought into it. Even some of the filmmakers talked about their funding, their struggles they had, and some of them, you know, didn't really have a lot of struggles, but it was all very interesting to hear from them. And I really am looking forward to what they all have coming next year.
Thanks. And Christina, do you want to? How did you get involved in the festival?
Actually,
I mean, I know they answered, but
Shane kind of forced me into it.
I say, like many of us, you just got suckered into it.
Yeah, I'm gonna force you to come outside your box, and first it was just kind of participating in the selection, and then the next year was kind of, I was getting asked to head the Native Cinema, and I was like, no. I really enjoy watching the films and helping select them, but I was hesitant. And then this past summer, I finally bit the bullet and decided to. So this was my first time, you know, helping select the films and finalizing the programs. And then I was really stressed out about the live Q&As. But And I like rewatched all the films and was like preparing. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is intense.
You did a great job. Just
Yeah.
You do a great job.
But I just really wanted to kind of get them talking about their films beyond what we saw. And I really hope that, you know, we picked good programs, because I felt they were very strong. I enjoyed all of the films. And I was telling my daughter last night, I said, you know, I was so busy rewatching Ready. I was so stressed that I haven't really watched too many other films. So now I'm cramming in all of our films.
Yeah.
But one of the things I told GNU that I really appreciated, and I have to like force myself to be open-minded, is like with his film, it showed a completely different perspective of Native culture than than you get in Native films, like he was saying, because typically, you know, you see the poverty, and his film showed a different perspective of a tribe or an individual who had some success or had some advantage. And the dad even said that in there, you know, we have these advantages, don't waste them. But I just enjoyed the film's contrast to what we usually see. And I remember asking him, I didn't know if he had done it on purpose, but like the big house, you know, that was way different than what we usually see in Native film. And then he was explaining how, you know, what he, you know, he says, you know, it's a big house, but it's so, you know, it's kind of cold or whatever. It's empty in terms of it's just him, which, you know, I really didn't, I was glad he explained that, because I really didn't get that from the big house. I was just looking at it like, oh, wow, that's a big house, you know?
God, I got to do better.
Well, that's the nice part about film too. You know, you watch something one time and it is just like that first perspective, but then you can go back and watch a film over and see the layers and see, you know, the things that the meaning behind the meaning, kind of some depth to it that you don't catch sometimes right away. That's why I like film. You know, every time I watch one, I get more from it.
Yeah, and in editing, we had, of course, quite a few people being interviewed from different backgrounds. Some of them were part of Earl's Crow family, and some were art collectors and or friends or wives, and yeah, and in editing, and you watch their expressions of what they're saying, and the looks on their faces of how much they cared about this artist, or the funny stories, or the laughing, or they're about to cry about something. And it's just the editing process, it was a very moving thing for me too, of interacting with these people that we shot. You know, you shoot it, yeah, but that's just the beginning. When you get into it and try to select what parts to and how it goes together, I was tearing up just editing.
Lisa, your movie was so multi-layered. There was so much going on, all the history, the Native culture, but also just such a strong emphasis on the art. Was so satisfying to see him working, or to see the big picture, and then you would zoom in on just there was a picture of the riders, and then you just zoomed in on the aspen trees, and it was very, very moving. I mean, it's a still image, but the way that you highlighted so many aspects of his life, but also so many aspects of his work, was just inspiring.
Well, yeah, thanks. I was hoping that would come across, because watching him paint, the paintings weren't just static, like, okay, here's a beautiful image. There was so much that he put into that, and what he was drawing upon from that Montana landscape or whatever he would have to be painting, that you could tell he felt every leaf and every writer and every a horse and the water and the air. It was just all very present. And even though, yeah, a painting, it's still, it doesn't move technically when you see it, but there's been people who've contacted me who've seen his paintings in person that were deeply moved just by standing in front of a painting. And that, there's master painters of all kinds of disciplines, but not all of them can just move you to tears just standing in front of it. And so he had something special there, and as Janu can relate to too, he drew upon the traditions of the Crows, uh, the knowledge isn't even a big enough word to encompass what's passed down through the generations that he put into his paintings, and that kind of thing just fascinates me. The I don't. Janu's words were really good with it, even in the descriptions of a word meaning the heartbeat of creation. I don't have particular native words for those things, but I can feel that. Everyone has the opportunity to feel the heartbeat of creation in their own way, in their own experience, and when it's verbalized or shown or felt. What better thing is there to do than that? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. In terms of your two films, where have they shown, or what's been the process of getting them out to audiences? I'm just curious.
It's I'm in a third film festival this weekend. There's Santa Fe, there's this one, and boy, I sure love you guys. You guys make us feel so at home, and having the length rather than a few days, having it for what, 10?
Yeah.
It gives you more time to really not have to hurry through a whole bunch of films
Right.
that you want to see, and take your time and do it in a pace that works. And so the Red Dirt Festival is next. It's Stillwater, Oklahoma. And there is a film sales rep that did pick up the film that is going to find platforms for it. Thank goodness,
Wow.
because
Wow.
this art,
Congratulations.
it's art history. It
Yeah.
needs to be out there. And so I felt good about that, because then I did my job okay. So we'll see. I'd love to do a few more film festivals, but if it's commercially out there, of course you can't. But I'm just glad that the stature of this art, not just Earl's though, because they talk about Alan Hauser and T.C. Cannon and Kevin Red Star and all these other iconic artists, they deserve to be on the same level of artists known throughout the world. And I know Kevin Red Star is known throughout the world, and Earl is too. But household names, they deserve to be on the same level as Van Gogh and Picasso and Matisse, and because their art is that good and their message is that good. So it's just cool to be a part of that, and to be able to use my art background to help this forward. And what do you think, Janu?
Can you ask the what was the question?
I was just asking, like, where your films played so far, and
Right, thank you. It's one of those things where I was really thinking really hard about my answer, and then I forgot the question. And I started listening. So I think we have been in 12 festivals so far.
Right.
And the adventure of Looking Glass, it's gone through a different edit for the past 3 years. So the first year was an edit, second year was another edit, and then this year I think it will be the final edit, because I don't think there's anything I can do more with it to speak. And it's a process, because it doesn't reflect the original screenplay per se, even though it has the essence of what it was supposed to be, only because, you know, budgetary constraints, things that you can't accomplish. And I think it's really just fortunate that everybody except for Dave Sterling, who played the, you know, white American, which he named himself, was my relative. Oh, and the and my wonderful cinematographer Brian Downey. He's not my relative per se, but he's grown to be my brother in the past few years that we've been working together. He's actually from Liverpool, and he's really highly motivated about Native culture, and creates beautiful imagery. I know that we have gotten into one film festival that I'm not allowed to say yet, just because it's not the notification time. It's still months off, but they said you got in, but don't say nothing yet because it's not fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm proud of all of the festivals that we've gotten into. But we just got into our first actual full-fledged science fiction film festival, which is in Miami. You know, we've gotten so much love on the West Coast and, you know, out west. But this was the first one where we were kind of in the pool with everybody, you know, crossing our fingers, and, you know, we got the notification that, you know, we were accepted, and that's going on right now. And I think we're in the Be Brave Human block on the 12th of the Miami International Science Fiction Film Festival. I saw some of their films yesterday, and it's just I love independent film because there's so much talent. There's films that I've seen in festivals that had like no budget, like no skill whatsoever, but they're captivating because the characters and the people have so much heart. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell they didn't have lighting, they didn't have the right equipment and things like that, but it was just engaging because the heart was in it and you could follow along. You know what I mean? And I think that's just the best cinema. You know, people who still have their heart in it and who are not after big bucks or anything like that. You know what I mean? They just want to tell a story. You know, they want to give of themselves, and it comes across, you know.
Yeah, the message doesn't have to be compromised in an independent film in a way that, say, well, even big budget films, I suppose that can happen too. But talking to some filmmakers and forums and things, it's like, okay, there's this formula that works and it's going to sell, and if you do it this way, it will sell. And that supersedes the story. Is what can I create that will sell? And yes, they want to make a living, but with independent film, more often you do see some experimentation and of, oh, what is it I really want to say? And if it's well done and if it's effective, then people will want to see it, you know, because there is a lot of films out there that, you know, they're good, but they fit a formula. Like, oh yeah, I've seen a film just like that, only different actors. You know, that same plot, same storyline, and it's entertaining or whatever it is. But I like seeing people that break the boundaries of what's done before, and I keep going back to Janu here because he's done that. He broke some boundaries with that Looking Glass one, and I think I'll watch it again before it goes away. You have a fan here, Janu.
Likewise, thank you.
I wanted to say to Lisa that also I thought that your film, for me, was very educational because I didn't know anything about Earl Biss, and so the first I learned of him was when another team member, I can't remember what film group it was, forwarded it to us, and I watched it and I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. And even just listening to his message in it was, you know, where he talked about the, you know, his paintings had meanings and he had what things he was trying to convey that frustrated him, that he didn't feel people saw beyond the art, which so I got that from the film, and I was like, oh wow, each of his paintings is speaking, some message. So I was just really, I don't know, blown away by the art, and then also everything that he was trying to say. And I'm just really glad that, I discovered him, and also that there's the opportunity to see his art in that. I guess you have the Santa Fe Film Festival did that
Yeah,
live walkthrough of his artwork.
yeah, the exhibit there where Rodrigo, he was the native cinema director of the Santa Fe Film Festival, like you are for this one, Christina. And then Paul Zuger, the owner of the gallery, they went through and Paul talked about each painting. He represented Earl for many years, and they knew each other well. And of course, Paul is interviewed in the film too. And he's been great support. American Design is his company, has like 6 or 7 galleries, and he's been tremendous support for this because he recognizes Earl's genius. Really, he calls him a genius. And having studied art for many years myself, I would have to agree with that on his ability to put paint on canvas. And yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
haven't watched that yet. I believe it's available on YouTube.
what
The
the
walkthrough.
oh, the walkthrough? Yes, it's on Facebook. It's a long name. I wonder why they gave it such a long name. It's hard to remember. It's the Earl Biss uh, art viewing and premiere. They call it a premiere because that's where the movie premiered. Uh, what I can do is find the link to that and put it on the Durango Film Festival threads,
that'd be
so
great.
people could go see. Because that was a magnificent show. They did put it together specifically for the Santa Fe Film Festival as another way to explore the art. And a few people were able to go in person. Like if you lived in fact, if you're from Santa Fe, you hear this, you can even go in and see it in person. It just knocks your socks off with the pieces they put together. But yeah, it's just wonderful to work in this field and around people that love the work they do. And filmmaking's a community kind of field, you know, because you can't, well, I guess you can do it by yourself, but it'd be really hard. It's neat to work with other people and bring in a vision about. I've got to say, if you see me squirming around here, it's because for some reason I put my back out, so I'm just kind of squirming around. But I can't complain because one time Earl broke both his hands and they were all bandaged up, and he had to paint for a show, and he's painting with 2 hands, 2 broken hands.
Wow.
Beautiful show, sells out, so I can't complain that if my back's a little sore, but that's why I'm wiggling around.
Hey, Lisa, I'd just like to add one more comment. I lived in Santa Fe for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and loved the galleries, went to the galleries, had artist friends, everything. And somebody asked me before I saw the movie, have you ever heard of Earl Biss? Somebody who had seen the movie already in the festival. And I said, no, I don't know who that is. And then when the paintings came on, I was like, I know the paintings. I just didn't know him. Person or who he was, and I don't understand how I didn't know that, but I'm so grateful for your movie because he's definitely somebody worth knowing. But his art already stood out. It was already something that you would see, and I just had no way to make the connect. And I don't know, if that's just my own deficit or if that's something that's truly out there for a lot of people, that they recognize the images but they don't know anything about the artist. So I'm really happy for your movie for that.
Yeah. Well, Earl and his contemporaries lived in a time before social media, and to draw attention to yourself, first your art had to be incredibly wonderful, and the story of the artist, and he was in the newspapers a lot, quite often for his talent. but also sometimes for his antics, he'd get in trouble and things. But then, there's good and bad to that, but he'd be in the newspaper for some annex he did, or maybe he even was in jail for a little while and got out, and that'd be in the newspapers, and then they go, oh, well, what's he doing now? And then they'd go to a show and it'd sell out because of the bad publicity. So, but that, sometime, and he even kind of admitted sometimes he did these things to draw attention to himself, like Hunter Thompson, his friend, would do that too. But it's that was before social media. You had to do certain things. You
He
don't
was
have
his
to
own
go,
influencer.
and most
Yeah.
people didn't go to jail to draw attention to themselves. Most artists had other ways of doing that, and it wasn't just that, of course. But now the whole terrain of drawing attention to your art form, no matter what it is, look what social media is, how that's changed the whole landscape. Even now with the pandemic, where you can
Yeah.
at least you can still connect, and in fact, in ways that possible for people all over the world to see what's occurring than in person, which I really miss the in person. We got to have the in person back. But, if this were an in person panel, it'd be a room full of people, but it wouldn't be recorded. And who knows, more people might know about Janu's film or mine or some of the other native filmmakers that's a part of this festival, or all of the films. I watched one last night that was really great. What was it? One about Ted. I forgot the name of it. It was really good. Ted was, Give or Take. I loved that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was good. But so it's not just this genre, but we're here talking about, of course, the native cinema, because that's why we're here.
Yeah. We just have a few more minutes. I don't know if anyone has any final comments before we sign off for the morning and hopefully go watch some more films.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
I just want to say for anybody watching that hasn't seen any, all of the native films, they should watch all of them.
Yeah.
Everyone has a wonderful message and artistry to it, every single one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would love to do with the program, because, I work up at Fort Lewis College, and, we're up to, I think 40% of our student population is now Native American. And I would love to expand the program up there. It's hard during the festival. It's hard. Usually it falls during spring break. And so it's always hard to get the students to come down to the festival. So I would love to take it up there and really have the films watched by the entire student population up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for participating this morning, guys.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for
Thanks.
for making it possible, and we really appreciate what your staff has done.
Right.
It's been a good experience.
Yeah, thanks for joining us all this morning. This was our final coffee talk. Hopefully everyone can join us for the awards ceremony on Saturday at 5 p.m. We sent out links to filmmakers last night, and I know it's posted on our Facebook page, and we're trying to get an e-blast out. So it'll be virtually on Zoom and on Facebook Live. So we will see you then.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
See ya.